Welcome to the Venus Charge. Today we are going to be speaking to Hlamalani. Hlamalani, would you like to introduce yourself to us?
My name is Hlamalani Ngwenya. Hlamalani is the Tsonga word for be surprised, and Ngwenya means crocodile. So I always say that I am full of, surprises.
I love that. Surprising crocodile. I love that. It's different. So where did you grow up?
A very interesting thing because I grew up in different areas. My father was a priest. So, as a priest, you move from one place to another. So I was born in the Eastern Cape. When I was a year old, we moved to a place called Malamulele in Limpopo province. We stayed for 4 years and we moved to Davidton in the East Rand. We stayed for another 4 years. We moved to Bushbuck Ridge. We stayed for another 4 years. We moved to Tembisa. We stayed for another 4 years. We moved to Kiani. Kiani, it's a place in Limpopo province. There we stayed more than 4 years. And that is the place where we'll call it home. And when my parents retired, they went and, lived in Bushbuck Ridge. So that is also another place that I call home. So I could say, I grew up in different, parts of, South Africa.
Oh, that's really fascinating. That's almost a nomadic life. Being a PK, what number child are you in your family? Are you the eldest or the youngest?
We are a half dozen. I'm number 6. And I think probably that is where my name comes from. My elder sister, who is late, unfortunately, it's a she. The second one was a she. The third one was a she. Then came my brother, who's number 4. The fifth one was a she. Then when I came, I'm sure my parents were saying, be surprised of so many girls. Wow. And they stopped there.
Well, that's a lot of girls.
Yes, so we have, 5 girls and 1 brother.
So in my mind, because you've traveled so much, I imagine that you've picked up quite a lot of African folktales along the way. Did you pick up any African folktales from perhaps your grandparents or just around, I suppose, like having lived around the country?
Okay, well, I could, have something, but unfortunately, when we talk about, grandparents, I was not fortunate enough to know my grandparents. And the reason being that my father, originated from Mozambique, my mother too. So my father came to South Africa when he was about 14, many years ago, and he came, looking for greener pastures. And he went back to Mozambique and married a Mozambican girl and brought her to South Africa. So that's how they actually moved and settled in South Africa. So by the time I was born, my grandparents had passed on. I had never, had an opportunity to see them. I probably saw one grandparent, probably maybe 1 or twice, but I can't really remember. But talking about grandparents, I look at it in a positive sense, is that, as we moved from one place to another, I gained a lot of, grandparents. So not necessarily the grandparents, my paternal and maternal grandparents, but I gained a lot of, grandparents.
It takes a village. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. So, as a Tsonga child, there are a lot of, things that I like. I like, proverbs. I like, yes. So there is a proverb that we like to say. I don't know how to translate it, directly in English, but it says one finger cannot lift a grain or something like that. So yeah, so in Tsonga we say rinti horingwe arinusi hove. What that simple means is that, you need others in order, to achieve something. So I like that so much, yes.
Being a preacher's child, do you have a favorite hymn that you like or a favorite verse? Could be a song.
So when your father is a priest, you definitely love singing because you start singing when you are still in your mother's tummy. And we grew up and would be singing and singing to an extent that my elder daughter, her name is Shilombe. Shilombe means someone who sings so well. That is how much I love music. I love different kind of music, but of late, there is a song. So my sister, my third-born sister, her name is Kensani. She's an artist, she composes, she's so creative. She composes songs for events and all that. So recently, she composed a song about me, about my life. That is one of the most, favorite songs that I like, because it is so special in the sense that I feel that I am the only person in the world who has a song that sings about your life from A to Z. I've never heard anything like that. So definitely that has to become, my favorite, song.
So is it safe to say that this is your theme song? You listen to this song like every day?
Yeah, so in my car, even my ringtone, my ringtone, it's, because, it's the lyrics of that song. So she actually composed it when, I was celebrating. It was a surprise song. I was graduating for my PhD and all that. It's such a beautiful song. So my ringtone, it is, you get into my car, I'm listening to the song because it's such a beautiful song. I like the lyrics,
Who is God to you?
Okay, like I said, that, my father was a priest. So I could say that I grew up in a Christian family. And not only that, I know there are people who grow up in a Christian family, but, as they grow older, they find, their own path. My parents are no more. I remain, in church. I remain, being a Christian. So yes, I believe in God. I believe in Jesus. And sometimes, is this kind of things that you can't even express or explain. But yes, I do believe in God, and I believe I'm a true, Christian, so to say, yeah.
So is there a place for African spirituality? Do you believe in the ancestors?
Well, I've learned to respect, diversity. So I will talk about my experience as a child. So my parents never raised us to believe in, in ancestors and all that. But I know there are people who believe in ancestors. I don't judge them. I think, it's different, and everybody has, different experiences. So for me, when I'm in trouble, I kneel down and pray. When I'm happy, I kneel down and pray. So that is what my parents have actually raised me to believe. Even when we were, when we had babies and all that, we never really practiced any ritual or whatsoever. I've never practiced any ritual, whether it's, with babies and all that. We just don't know. I wouldn't even know which other ritual I could actually practice, except, for the Christianity that I have been raised to believe. But again, I respect, diversity. I respect, what other people believe and all that, yeah.
You mentioned your parents had passed on. Do you believe in guardian angels?
So I think my guardian angel will always be linked to, the Christianity and all that. But I still believe that, the spirit of my parents, is actually there guiding me and all that. But my belief, my guardian angel will be linked to God himself.
Okay. All right. So your favorite animal?
I love that. As an African, I indicated that my surname is Ngwenya. So I actually have 4 favorite animals, and I will tell you why. So a crocodile, by default, is my favorite animal because I am Ngwenya. So I am Ngwenya, the crocodile. So I have to love the crocodile. But also, I have an elephant as my other favorite animal because my mother is Ndlovu, and Ndlovu means elephant. So yes, so elephant, I love elephants and all that. When I was younger, I was very thin and tall, with a very elongated neck. And some children used to tease me. They used to tease me, you look like a giraffe. At that time, it used to bother me. How can they think I'm a giraffe? But as I grew older and began to study, the life of a giraffe, I'm like, that is my inspiration. So giraffe is another animal that I like. I always say I'm inspired by the giraffe. It's elegant when it walks. So I take a lot of inspiration from the giraffe. It eats from the top. That's what I would like to believe, that, I eat from the top, where no one else can actually reach. The last animal that I like so much is a zebra. A zebra became my favorite animal because my children are mixed race. They're half Germans. So we used to play around with their dad when I was pregnant with my first daughter, and we would play around and say, what if she comes out like looking like a zebra, like black and white, like a zebra? So we were teasing. And since then, that's how I call my children. I call them the zebras because they are black and white. So I call them my little zebras, and we love zebras. So zebra has become an additional favorite animal in my, my space.
I like that, your little zebras. Your favorite book, a book that's defined you?
So, well, I love the Bible, of course. But there is a book, I know, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. That book, I love it so much because it taught me a lot of things. But another one that was my favorite, it's not a big one, but it has a lot of impact in my life. It's Who Moved My Cheese? Very small, short, but the message in that book, even today, I actually get, some of the messages that helped me in what I do. Who moved my cheese? Or whose cheese can I move? And things like that, yeah.
Yeah, who moved my cheese is pretty cool. Okay, favorite meal?
Meal. Ooh. Do you really want me to tell you my favorite meal? Mopani worms.
Mopani worms, really?
Yeah.
Why?
Ooh, I love mopani worms. Even now that I'm talking about it, I'm kind of salivating. I love mopani worms.
So do you prepare them in like a Shitonga way? Is there a specific way that you make them, or you just kind of just have them the way like everybody else has them?
Yes, no. I mean, that is a Tsonga, that a lot of, Tsonga people really eat that. But funny enough, because when I grew up, my father was very picky. So we didn't eat mopani worms at home. We only ate, beef and fish and chicken and nothing else. No pork, nothing and whatnot. But as I grew older, I just fell in love with mopani worms. I love it. So that will be my favorite meal. Yes. Then the other favorite meal that I like, and my children like it as well, it's a German dish called Spätzle. It's a beautiful dish because I learned that from my mother-in-law. When we visited, I was married to a German. So we'll visit my mother-in-law. She will always prepare that dish all the time for my children. Then I learned how to prepare it. And I think I prepare it very well, better than maybe some of, Germans themselves. It's like pasta, but you make it yourself, with flour, yeah.
Is that a little bit like gnocchi?
Yeah, but no, it looks like spaghetti. So you take flour and you mix with eggs, and you have a special tool that you use to then you boil it a little bit and stuff. Yeah, so that is also the favorite meal that my children like.
Okay, your favorite game growing up?
Ooh, I remember growing up, we'll do a lot of games. We had a game called Tinketo. That one I liked so much, and we will play other games like Bati. These games they don't exactly exist in the Western space, so where you throw like tins and cans and all that and whatever. But Tinketo, I liked it so much because it teaches you coordination, because you have to throw it up and you take, you put back, you throw out and you take and put back, yeah. So I liked it so much. At some point, I will be teaching my kids how to play that game.
That's interesting. Mm-hmm. I think I actually played that. What is your creative outlet? Do you have one?
Yes. Okay, so my weakness, my biggest weakness, is music. It's singing. Like I said, I probably learned music from a very, very early age. So I love music so much, and I love singing so much. So, currently, the kind of work that I do, I facilitate and moderate. You'll find me actually singing, sometimes even getting people to sing along. I love it so much. Like I said, that my elder daughter's name is actually Shilombe, which means someone who sings so well. So I'll be moderating things around, climate change, and I'll compose a song, climate change is real, things like that. But beyond that, I like poetry. Recently, I've started, writing, poems. And it actually helps me a lot because when I'm feeling sad, I can actually let it out, through poetry. When I'm happy, I can actually express how I feel through poetry. When I'm sad, I actually express myself, through poetry. So yes, singing and poetry, it's something that I I like, a lot.
That's really great. Have you published anything? Will you be publishing any of your works?
Very soon. Actually, I've already compiled maybe more than 50 poems, and they are classified into different groups, or classifications. So I have poems that speaks about, my origin. Remember, I spoke a little bit about my favorite animals. So I actually have a poem called, I Am Ngwenya, and the other one, Carrying an Elephant Blood, is a poem. Inspired by a Giraffe is a poem. But also I have a poem called Raising Zebras, because I'm raising, my kids and stuff. But also I had poems that speaks about my life in general, successes, pain, how I express that, and, how I challenge, certain things and all that. So that is really, really my creative outlet, if I were to say, yeah.
What truly inspires you from your core?
Life in general. I've been very fortunate to be traveling a lot. So under normal circumstances, when we are not, in a COVID, setup and lockdown, I get to travel abroad on average every 6 weeks. So I have done work in many countries. And what inspires me is just, seeing the world as I travel and meet people. I get inspired by what they do. I like to see the differences that we have. And that on its own, people's challenges, people's successes, I get a lot of, inspiration from that. And just, to be with people in general, and different people from different levels, very successful people, or people who are really struggling and trying to make a living and all that. I learn to appreciate and learn from each one of them. So that really, really inspires me a lot, yeah.
So we're switching gear, your career path. What does that look like, and what caused you to take this path?
I have a very interesting, career path, because what I started is not where I am now. I started as a home economics teacher. I always loved teaching. So even when I was young, when you asked me, what do you want to do? I knew that I wanted to be a teacher. So I started home economics then went on and taught at the high school level. I taught at an agricultural high school, but I had also a lot of, passion in education and studying, because I remember my parents told me that, and I actually went to school when I was 5, where I actually took myself to school. So I will say that, learning and education had always been important. So when I had my junior degree, I continued to study further. And as much as I was learning home economics, I was more interested in the nutrition part of it. So I studied community nutrition for my honors degree and also at master level. So with community nutrition, then it brought me closer to the community. So I left the high school and I went to a college of agriculture. That was the closest that I had with agriculture. Even then I was there, I didn't teach anything related to agriculture, but it was more, on community based, issues and all that. And fast forward, then I started, gaining experience and started to teach agriculture extension. And 25 years later or 28 years later, I'm working in the agricultural sector. Actually, I've been working in this sector for over, 25 years now. And I always say I came into the sector through the back door because I didn't come through studying agriculture per se. But here am I, 25 years later, I work in the sector, I promote the sector, and I always say I'm doing a perfect job within the agricultural sector. So this is where I am working.
So would you define what a perfect job would look like?
Yes, I say I'm doing a perfect job, not because what I'm doing is perfect, but because I have found my niche or perfect niche within the sector. Like I said, that I never studied agriculture. So under normal circumstances, there's no way that I would have even imagined myself working in the agricultural sector if I had not really come through the back door and begin to experience how the sector and what the sector can offer. So I work a lot in the policy space, in the agriculture policy space, at national level, at regional level, continental level, up to the global level. Like I said, that I'm a trained teacher, so I also work a lot within the education space in the agricultural sector, agriculture education. Like even now, I'm a lecturer at the University of Free State, so that is education. I've worked a lot, with researchers, agricultural research. the farmers themselves, also the finance element. But like I said, that I taught, agriculture extension and advisory services. At some point, I taught communications for development. So there is a C there. Then I work a lot, with people within the agricultural trade, but also technologies. So that offers a perfect opportunity within the agricultural sector. So I use PERFECT as an acronym for policies, education, research, farming, finance, extension and advisory services, communications, and issues of trade and technology. So what I'm advocating for is that you don't necessarily have to like farming, but it's possible for you to find your niche along the perfect contour. So each of the latter can actually open up opportunities within the agricultural sector, and I am a living proof of that.
I love that perfect acronym. It actually works and can be implemented in many different areas. I love it. So what does success look like for you? How would you define it?
I will define success in a different way. I think, it also depends on what is important for you. There are people who will define success from the financial or economic gain. You make a lot of money, then you are successful. Do I want money? Of course. Otherwise, I wouldn't be working so hard. I do want money. But do I define success based on the amount of money I have? For me, not necessarily. So for me, success is really broad. I think about success even from the social, element. So the things that drive me, it's not, the financial gain, but it's more the social cohesion. So for me, I will define success by finding the balance between the things that are important for me. I need finances so that, I can put food on the table. I need to live a comfortable life. But if I will do that at the expense of, my social cohesion and stuff, then I wouldn't consider myself successful. So I need to find a balance between, not becoming a financial giant and become a social dwarf. So that's how I define my success.
What's your definition of wealth then?
I think it's linked, success, but also it's linked to wealth. So I think, there is no clear divide between, what I look or see as successful and wealth. So yes, also for me, I would say I'm wealthy when I have both financial stability, but also my social, I'm a family person. I love, my clan, I love my people and things like that. So I also define wealth through the people that I keep, the friendships that, I nurture, the people around me. I always say that I'm wealthy. My family, especially my family, like my sisters and my siblings, that is my biggest wealth. We might not have, a lot of money, but believe me, the happiness that one has, especially when I'm around them and all, for me, they are my wealth. And the family in general, they are my wealth.
So based on my personal definition of what success is, I believe you're successful. So then I would then ask, when did you know you had arrived? As in, when did you know you were successful?
I'm not sure if I've arrived. Juggling. And yes, you could say that, comparative speaking, I'm comfortable with where I'm at, but I have not arrived. Hence, I would try to innovate and really try this and try that and all that. So yes, so I wouldn't say that I have arrived. But, am I comfortable? Yes, I am comfortable. So that's how I will respond to that, yes.
So with success, I don't know, you probably got yourself a gift. What was that? What was your first over-the-top gift to yourself when you realized that you had arrived?
So I started working when I was 21. So at 21, I had like my first job. I had my 4-year degree at university because I did my matric when I was 16. So I did my matric when I was 16. Then I went and did a 4-year degree. Then I started working at 21. It was quite interesting because you start working, you're earning your salary. And I was looking at, some of my friends. And the friends would buy cars and whatnot. My first gift that I bought for myself was a bicycle.
A bicycle? That's pretty different. Okay.
So I bought myself a bicycle and I will ride my bicycle to work. And people ask me, a bicycle? I said, yeah, I don't want to skip any steps. I start from a bicycle By the time I buy a car and what, I don't want to miss any steps. So I started, with a bicycle.
What do you believe people don't understand about you or know about you that you would like them to know about you?
Maybe let me start with what a lot of people don't know about me, and I would like them to know, is that, I'm very hyperactive. That one people know. Okay. But what people don't know, it's that I don't take alcohol. It's a very tricky one, because when you see the level of energy that I have, those who know me, they will know me. If it means, climbing on the table somewhere and all that. And a lot of people will mistake me for somebody who's high because she's drunk. And I don't, So I just have, this natural energy in me. So a lot of people don't know. And yes, I did, I probably tasted alcohol when I was 36. Yeah, a sip of, wine and all that when I was 36. So yes, maybe I could, maybe a glass of wine there when I was 36. And I just said, no, this is not for me. So this is something that people don't know. But put me with people here, you will think that I'm the most drunk person, because the level of energy that I have is just amazing.
That's a nice choice to make with your life when it comes to alcohol. What have your biggest wins been, and what has your biggest failure been, and how did you overcome it?
Okay, so we all fail. I always remember my brother. I remember, when you are young, you come with problems, there's this boyfriend there, and I don't know, there's this problem there and whatnot. My brother doesn't remember this. But, here am I, approaching my 50s and stuff. I still remember what my brother will say. So I will run to him, crying, and, I have this problem and all that. And my brother will ask me a question, or maybe he will just, make me think of 2 or 3 or 5 other people that we knew during that time. So he will say to me, Hlami, do you know so-and-so? I said, yeah. Do you know that he or she's going through this kind of challenges? I said, yes. Then he will quote maybe about 5 people that will know in that space. And he will ask me a question. If you were to choose between the problem that you have and those other 5 problems, which one would you choose? And he was smart, because he will pick the problems that were bigger than what I was going through at that moment. And I will say to him, no, I will stay with my problem. And you know what his response will be? Then your problem is a non-issue. At that time, it didn't make sense, but it helped me a lot. And now I still remember that. I go through challenges like any other person. And every time I have challenges, I remember the voice of my brother. I look around me and see people with similar challenges, some that are even bigger than what I'm going through at that particular moment. And I reflect and say, you know what? If I am going through challenges, everyone else is going through challenges. When I compare the challenges that I have, that give me strength to say, you know what? Probably my challenges in comparison, it's a non-issue. So that helps me a lot to say, you know what? Wake up, rise up, and, soldier on, because challenges are there. And one thing that I've also learned is that it's not the challenge that it's a problem, but it's how I react to that challenge. If I see it as something that actually pulls me down, I'll stay wherever it is. Then I have to decide, how long do I want to stay in that state of, misery and all that. And time and again, I find, strength to rise up through prayer, but also through the support from family and friends. I never really underestimate that.
So what are the biggest wins that you've had?
I think my biggest win is trying to find or to see the brighter side of that challenge. I have a challenge. If I try to find, the brighter side of that, I find that actually I use the challenges to push me. One of the challenges that maybe want to share, I went through a really tough time in terms of divorce and separation and all that. It was really, really challenging. I won't go into details of that. But at that moment where I was at my lowest moment, I could have decided to become an alcoholic, or I could have went into a mental hospital, and it would have been justified. But I decided, okay, gaining strength, from the people around me, the support, and use that challenge to my advantage, in the sense that you look back and you say, okay, fine, let me redefine who I am and all that, and you move and whatever. I'm looking back 10 years later, I'm actually even happier of what I have achieved in the past, 10 years. But that was prompted by, the challenges that I got myself in. So yes, so things like that, yes.
I'm just curious as to how you pulled yourself up from the bootstraps and kept going.
I mean, any form of separation, it's hard. There are a lot of, emotions that go through that, because you have built a lot, you have put a lot of energy yourself in that relationship. And, depending on which side you are at, you'll always have, a different story to tell. But for me, I knew that I needed to pick, myself up somehow. Whether it's separation, it's divorce, it's any form of conflict, as human beings, we all have the energy, and we have the energy to fight. So for me, what worked for me, it's where do you channel that energy? You can fight, a fight because at the end of the day, or you choose to channel the energy to fight a different battle. So I think that that's what I did. The first 2 years was really up and down and all that. But at some point, I just decided, you know what? I want to fight, but I want to fight a different battle. I had to look at myself and say, where do I see myself in the next 10 years? Where do I want to see myself in the next, 20 years, or in the next, 25 years or so? So I decided to take, that energy that I had, the energy to fight that I had at that moment, and channel it in fighting a different battle of rebuilding, my life. There were times where I had to do 5 jobs, literally 5 jobs, 3 kids, 5 jobs. And I had put my PhD aside because it was really heavy at that time. But I had a lot of support, like I said. So in that process of juggling, doing 5 jobs, there were times where I will wake up in the morning, I will sit, work all night long, and suddenly I look out, it's daylight. The children are actually getting up. They want me to take them to school. I had, those days, a lot of those days, because I had to juggle. I had to rebuild myself, to find myself, who I am, and all that. And that gave me a lot of strength. So, when you start working, when you are already 40, you don't have, pensions, you don't have a lot of things. You need to find ways of, catching up. So one way of catching up, I started investing in properties. I said, you know what, let me invest in properties and let me see where it will take me to. And sometimes I will start something, I don't have money, but to find ways of, really getting a small bond here, maybe take a bond here and buy, this property here and all that, yeah. So now, in the past 10 years, I've managed to kind of, raise maybe about 6, small properties. They are not mine, all of them, because I still have, bonds that I'm servicing. But that gave me hope. That gave me strength to say, yes, actually. And for me, it was like, if you take your energy and focus it on something else, there are some breakthroughs. So yes, in the past, 10 years, I have managed to, generate small properties there and there. I'm not there yet, but small steps towards the bigger things that I want. There are a lot of trade-offs in that. I could be driving a big, nice car, but my trade-off is that, okay, fine, instead of me putting into the big, nice car, whatever little money I have, let me service the bond. In that process, my kids have to stay with the mom who is not there. Because if you're doing 5 jobs and you're raising 3 kids and you are studying and traveling, so there is so little, maybe so much that you can do as a person. But I've been juggling with that in the past 10 years. People will say, no, we see you traveling, we like it and all that. I always say, wait until you know what is behind the scene. And that is one of my poems. I have a poem called Behind the Scene. So you see this person, whatever, but there is a lot that is juggling, behind the scene. And it is those sleepless nights, juggling, with 5 jobs at any given time, doing assignments, this and that, not driving, a very nice car, but because I know what I want to achieve. So that's how I actually pick myself and really be focused and say, you know what, I'm going to achieve, come rain, come thunder. remember I spoke a little bit about this empowerment and emancipation. So empowerment, things are there, the power is given to you. But for you to be able to utilize that power, you need to know that internal drive. And that internal drive comes with sleepless nights. It comes with a lot of challenges that you have to overcome as long as you know the direction that you are getting to and this is what you want to achieve. I remember I saw this house was on auction. That's when I started. I didn't have a cent. I was looking at auctions. I actually had to take a bond against my house so that I can get a bit of money to start and all that, And I'm hoping that I will, in the future, grow that property footprint. At the moment, I'm still, doing, small steps. But that is where I'm heading. And I say, when an opportunity comes, hopefully I'll be able to convince someone that, you know what, you can invest in me in terms of property because even when I didn't have money, I've managed to do 1, 2, 3. So that is a different story than when you say, give me money, and yet you have not demonstrated what you have done when you didn't have the resources. So that is what I would like to see going on.
What has being a businesswoman in Africa taught you about yourself?
Okay, I will talk about, in Africa, but also in South Africa as well. As a woman in South Africa, there is a notion that, we talk about, affirmative action, which is a very important aspect given the history of where we come from. So affirmative action is very important as we went to redress, the imbalances of the past. But here am I work a lot outside the borders of South Africa. So the affirmative action language doesn't exist. So when I am outside the borders of South Africa, I cannot even say that I am black. That language doesn't exist for me. Because for me to make it there, I cannot put I'm black, I cannot put I'm previously disadvantaged because that language doesn't exist. I have to understand regional issues, global issues. I have to be competitive with other peers, women, male, female, from other African countries and in the global space. So that helped me a lot to say, what, as much as, there could be challenges that we look at, sometimes to make it out there, you cannot negotiate from the position of weakness. Because once I'm black and I'm previously disadvantaged, already I weaken my position. So I cannot negotiate from that position. So if there's an assignment at the global level, my first point of entry will be, I know global issues. This is what I know, and this is what I know, this is what I bring on the table. So then that gives me a bit of power and space to negotiate better. So that is something that I have learned to say, find ways of negotiating from the position of strength than from the position of weakness.
So, Ms. Globetrotter, you mentioned that you love to travel. Where have you traveled to, and what has been your favorite place to visit?
I have been fortunate to have traveled the world. I've been to 48 countries now, maybe 23 in Africa and beyond. And most of my travels are combined with work. Okay, so yes, there are a few travels where it's just, pure holiday, but, most of my travels are combined with work. So basically, I'll be combining, the two.
What's your favorite part about traveling?
So what I like so much is, I like to try out, new things. So when I go, first of all, I'm so obsessed with tea. So remember, I said, I don't take alcohol. So my alcohol is actually tea. I drink all sorts of teas. So first thing when I go to a country, I bring tea. It's like an obsession because then I'll have, piles and piles and piles of tea. But I also like to try out, food. I like to go to the restaurants. I like to try, food and all that. And I like to meet people and look at, the differences. Like I said, I've been in 48 countries. All the countries that I have been to, they are completely different. And people sometimes will ask me, which one is your favorite country? And I say, I don't have a specific, favorite country because whatever country I go to, I look at, different things. Some people will talk about favorite countries because of, it has got good infrastructure and all that. For me, these are not the things that I look at. I look at, different aspects. I look at the people. I look at the food. I look at, the diversities. So I might, like a country where infrastructure is not so good, but there's something that I have picked, either with the food, either with, the people themselves and stuff, So I refrain from saying which one is my favorite country, because I pick different things from all the countries that I travel to. Some of the countries I have gone to, many times, to an extent that I call them my second and my third home. So, for example, Germany automatically will be my second home because my ex-husband comes from Germany. So I spend a lot of time there. Some of my kids were born there. Then the Netherlands also becomes, my third home because I spent some time. I studied in the Netherlands for a year and I have visited the country many times. So in Africa, my second home or third home will be Kenya and Uganda because, these are the countries that I have, visited quite a lot. But Mozambique is my root home because, remember I said my parents originate from Mozambique. So yes, so these are some of the things that make me, like or maybe attach myself to certain countries. So there are different things that I look at.
How do you juggle career and family? And can you have it all?
That is an interesting one. I've indicated briefly that, I'm a single parent. So I'm raising, 3 beautiful children. And the past 10 years had been very challenging because then I had to, regain my strength and find myself and all that. Then I had to juggle. I teach at the university, but I also juggle with a lot of, assignments and all that. So I had to bring a big, strong support system because my job, involves a lot of traveling. So I travel a lot. So I have to bring a lot of, support system. So my support system will be my family. I have a very good helper. I actually call her my Minister of Home Affairs. And I treat her likewise. Believe me, if there is any person, any helper who's treated like a queen, my helper is one of them. I treat her like a queen. And my principle is that, if my helper is happy, extremely happy, she will treat my children likewise. And I know sometimes it doesn't always happen that way, but I'm fortunate enough to have that kind of relationship. So even when I travel, I know that, she has my children, my children's interest at heart. And I support her like that. I had to invest in her, took her to driving school. She can drive. But also as an incentive, I actually build a house in the rural home because I know there's no way that she will be able to afford that. Very big, house. So it becomes a give and take, a situation, yes.
Lessons from your parents that you currently use in your parenting style?
So the lesson that I've learned from my parents is the issue of love. If there's one thing that I remember my parents with, it's love. And I'll tell you why I say that. So my father was a priest. I don't remember as a family where we stayed as a nuclear family. I don't remember that. As much as we were 6, we were many, but we always had, people coming and all that. I don't remember where I felt my parents favor one child over another. And people will say, as a last-born child, you are spoiled and whatnot. I never felt that because my parents treated us, equally. So that is one thing that I have learned. And I hope, that it's something that I bring as I raise my children so that, at no given point will my children feel that, my mom favors, this one, over another. We are different children, but they treated us with, with love. And I never had a notion that, they favor someone over the other. So that is something that I take with. And to respect people, irrespective of their economic status, irrespective of where they come from. You treat them as human beings, and we take it from there.
Do you find that there's a difference between the way you parent your girl children versus how you parent your son? Do you find that maybe you're a little bit more cautious when it comes to your daughters and a little bit more liberal when it comes to your son? Is that something that you find, or it's the same across the board?
My experience is it's different. And I don't want to generalize and say it's parenting a girl child versus a boy child, but I will talk about the differences of my children. So my children are different. You have those who are more social, you have those who are more entrepreneurial, and by default or whatsoever, my son is more, entrepreneurial, and my daughters are more, social and that. So I treat them according to their strength. I treat them according to whatever weaknesses they have, try to build it together and all that. And funny enough, my son, he's the one who actually likes cooking and all that. So, already we redefine, those gender stereotypes that a girl child will be in the kitchen. My daughters don't love the kitchen. my son does. So I treat them based on their strengths and support them accordingly, but not on the basis of, certain stereotypes.
That's really cool. So growing up in apartheid South Africa and then coming out of that and going into an interracial relationship, what was that like for you? And beyond that, would you actually recommend dating interracially or marrying interracially?
Luckily, I would say, when I met my ex-husband, we were not in the apartheid space anymore. Things had relaxed a little bit. So I didn't really get to experience the discrimination that you hear from the people who dated interracially during that time. But strange enough, you still see, some stereotypes, sometimes where, things like, you'll be walking with your daughter and people will actually ask you, is that your daughter? Those kind of questions. But I will take it lightly. It's not something that I will really, take, at heart and really worry much about, because, people will always have, stereotypes, you like it or not. People will always have, differences and how they believe in certain things. But generally, I didn't really have the negativity around that. It was okay. Yes.
So you'd recommend it?
Yeah, I mean, I would recommend, for anything and everything, depending on what you like and what you feel comfortable about.
So modern day parenting, what are the challenges with that? What does that look like for you? I mean, you're actually parenting a multiracial family. What does that look like in terms of your, parenting skills?
That is an interesting one. One of the things that I like to do, I like, writing articles. One day probably I will publish. So one of the article or the book that is in the pipeline, I call it, complex parenting complexities. And that is more about my experience as a single parent who's juggling with so many things, but also raising complex children. And I call them complex children in the sense that, they are mixed, children, but also complex children, the millennials, the children that are growing up, in, the digital era and all that. So one thing that I pick, especially raising, a mixed, children, when they were younger, they will struggle around, identity. I remember when my little one went to a kindergarten, she will be playing with, other kids, white kids. And one day I went to pick her and one of the kids saw me and he was surprised. And he went back and actually asked the mom, is Shibono's mom black? Those kind of things, right? But fortunately, we had, a very good relationship and stuff. So it actually landed in my ears. So, you have to, because children, they see themselves, different and they're treated different and whatever. You have to kind of, find ways of encouraging them to say, you are who you are. Whether you like it or not, you are what you are. You just need to find a way of embracing who you are and whatever. Sometimes there'll be teas, in terms of their hairs and whatever. So you have to kind of, find ways of, helping them to find their niche within, the different cultures. And something that I preach, for my kids, I say, you know what? You are born in two strong cultures. Pick, what is beautiful and make it your own. I had to find ways of reaffirming, their position, to say, you know what, you are who you are, and there are certain things that you will be different. There are certain things that other people will not, understand. But as long as you are comfortable of who you are, you have to soldier on. It's not possible for you to fit into, people's perceptions. If people perceive you in a different way, it doesn't make you who you are. So you have to navigate and be strong. And I think I've managed to actually do that because, for example, my elder daughter, will stand firm, about embracing who she is. And my son as well, and my little one, they're finding it. But one thing that I find interesting is how adaptive they are. Remember, it's two cultures. We have the African culture, there is a German culture. And these are two different, cultures. I see how they adapt. For example, when they are with my side of the family, they can never call my sisters or my brothers with the first name, because culturally it's not acceptable. And my children have learned. When my friends, the African friends come, they will be calling them Auntie so-and-so, Mama so-and-so, and it happens naturally. But when my white friends or the German friends come, it's going to be James and that. It happens automatically. And children adapt in that space. I don't have to really even remind them. It happens automatically. They learn, they pick, the best of both cultures, and they make, their own, culture.
I love that. I love that you have like friends that actually support that. That's really brilliant. Especially for your daughter. I mean, her learning to appreciate and accept herself for what she is. That's really great. What is your greatest love lesson?
Oh, well, the greatest love lesson that I've learned is that, when you are in a relationship, what makes it work, it's when both parties, are building towards the same. If both parties are building toward the same, then you always find ways of accepting, each other's differences and all that. I think that is the greatest, what I can say. So it's possible if you are all, building, towards, the same destination.
Dating the side of 40, what's that like?
I'm approaching 50 now in the next 2 years. Funny enough, I have never really thought of that as yet. I think probably when my marriage fell, the past, 10 years, I have been focusing on rebuilding, my life and really finding different priorities and stuff. So I have not really opened up myself, and boom, it's 10 years and you go like, ooh, you don't even look at it because, my priorities had been, somewhere else. And do I close myself to that? Probably not. If and when that opportunity comes, who knows? But for now, I'm find, my comfort in the things that I do. I travel a lot, I work, I juggle, finding, new passion, started, getting into property space. And so there are so many things that I've been doing in the past 10 years that kept me so busy.
Is that what grounds you?
Yes, and because I see, these successes and I'm innovating and I'm doing this and whatnot. And probably maybe my requirements, because if I were to date again, there are certain things that the tick box, this I'll tick, 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 tick. So probably maybe I have to clone the person who will be like ticking, all the boxes, and things like that. But yeah, we'll see. I still believe in dating and love and all that. When the right time comes, that will happen. But for now, my priorities are elsewhere.
So you were just unpacking dating. I think 10 years is a long time.
Well, it depends. It depends on how you look at it. It's only now that you are saying it, I'm like, oh, it's been 10 years. Oh, it's been long. But I guess, I just had to reprioritize things. I had, different priorities where your plate is so full that you don't even think of adding into that. And I've been comfortable with it. Probably that will become, a challenge because I love, this space where I just, wake up and decide what I want to do and all that and whatnot. So if I were to go back into the dating game again, probably I would have to relearn the rules of the game, there. But until that time comes, I'm still nice and comfortable.
Yeah, I truly believe that when you're ready, it all falls in place. I agree. What are your morning rituals? When your feet hit the ground, what happens next? What do you do?
So when I wake up in the morning, I meditate. I'll still be in my bed. Like I said, I'm a spiritual person. So I like every single day that I wake up. I'm grateful for that. And always, I don't want to take it for granted that, I'll wake up tomorrow. So when I wake up in the morning, I'll still be lying in bed. I have to reflect. I reflect and, think of, the blessing, the fact that, I wake up in the morning, I'm still breathing. I reflect, and really, so that is my ritual. Every morning I say, thank you, God, for the newborn day and all that. I do that, quite a lot, yeah.
What grounds you?
I think what grounds me is probably how I was raised. I was raised to believe in people. I was raised to respect people. And I was raised to have humility, So I think that grounds me. These are some of the principles that I take with me into my adult life and whatnot. It doesn't matter how much people think you are successful and all that. For me, people remain people. They remain who they are. I respect people. I engage people irrespective of where they come from, irrespective of what they have, irrespective of who they are. I take them as people. So I think for me, that is something that I would like to take, to the grave. Just, that humility. I wouldn't like to see myself changing in that sense that I start not respecting people of who they are and all that. So that for me, it's something that is very important.
What can't you live without? You're deserted on a desert island. What are you bringing along with you?
I like my cell phone. Whether I'm in a space where there is no connectivity. So when I talk about my cell phone, is a cell phone not necessarily including the connectivity, the internet connection. Surely when there's an internet connection, then it adds value. But even if I'm in the space where there is no internet connection, I love my cell phone. I use it for many things. I love pictures, of course. I take pictures. But I have my notebook on my phone. Remember I told you that I write poems and all that. I wake up in the middle of the night, run out of sleep. I reach out for my cell phone, not because I want to go into social media, but I go to my notebook, and that is where I use it, to write, those ideas. When I'm traveling and I'm watching a movie, there is a nice phrase, I'm picking that. So I love my cell phone because it has become my diary and my resource, tool.
So you have your poetry on your cell phone?
Yes.
Would you share some of those with us, please?
Yes, I will share that. There are some that I've posted on my social media platform like YouTube. I can actually share, some links so you can, listen to that. Mm-hmm.
Tribalism in Africa, I know that I've risen above my own personal stereotypes based on what people have decided I am. What have you risen above in terms of the same thing, like stereotypes and just tribalism?
When you talk about tribalism, it's very interesting, and it's something that is very close to my heart. And the reason being that, I am Tsonga. So Tsongas actually in South Africa are still, even in this day and era, there are still, a lot of, stereotypes. Things are changing a bit, but there are a lot of stereotypes around that. And being somebody who's on the receiving end, you get subjected, to certain things. I could tell a lot of stories where I have been subjected, to different, stereotypes. And so I look at that with a lot of interest. And I say, what, I am Tsonga, whether you like it or not, I'm Tsonga, I've embraced that. But also, I put myself in the shoes of a Tsonga kid who's somewhere in the deep rural area in Giyani, who still feels, undermined because of their ethnic group and all that. So I have to be, that voice and inspire, that young child. So in my way of doing that, like I said, that I write, poems and all that. I have a poem that, talks about Mutsonga wa Shiviri. So basically, it's a poem that reflects on my experience of where I know cases where people will think, I'm dark-skinned. Because I'm dark-skinned, I'm not beautiful. And you will get people who will think because you are Tsonga, you are backward, you are not intelligent enough and all that, I've been through that. And I know there are a lot of, Tsonga people who could attest to that. So for me, it is something where I say, I put my foot on the ground, I am Tsonga, and, so that poem, it's more about, ventilating and really doing that. And that has helped me a lot because I know to be on the receiving side of being, undermined because of who you are and where you come from. And when I go out, to the country, I go to other African countries, I meet people, I have that at the back of my mind. I know how it feels to be ridiculed. So I make sure that I don't, do that. I don't undermine people on the basis of who they are. I don't undermine people on the basis of where they come from. I don't undermine people on the basis of whether they come from poor backgrounds and all that, because I know how it feels to be undermined on the basis of things that we have no control over. So that for me is a good lessons that I have learned, and I teach my children as well. My children are half Germans. We go to, deep rural areas and all that. You should see my children interacting with people there because I teach them that you are not better. You are a human being. You might be privileged to be born in the space where you have resources and all that, but that doesn't make you a better person over others.
As a trailblazer, what would you want the women that are going to follow in your footsteps to know? What's the message that you'd like to give us?
I think what I could say to the women that are coming and the women that, I even look up to, I believe in two things. I always say there is empowerment, which I think it's good, because we need, those policies that empowers us. We are given the space, we are given the tools and all that. But for me, it doesn't end there. For me, empowerment is not the most important thing. The most important thing is what I call emancipation. And I try to differentiate these two. Empowerment is like, even when you look at the dictionary, to empower somebody is to give power. But your ability to utilize that power, it's what makes you successful, not the power itself. Otherwise, everybody will be successful, especially when you look at South Africa. Most of our policies are more liberated and all that. But it's not everybody who's able to utilize those space and that policies. So let us strive for what I call emancipation. Emancipation is something that comes from within. And that goes beyond what somebody gives you. When they give you, how do you empower yourself? How do you invest in yourself in order for you to develop skills to actually, utilize that space? And for me, I think that is the most important thing. As much as we want other people to support us, and we need that, we also need to take those small steps and want to be supported and want to do something. I always use an analogy of, a race. We all start together, but, there is that one person or two people who will be touching the finishing line faster than other people. And why? It's because, they have, that inner strength that is beyond other people. As we talk about women empowerment, let us also think about emancipation. To say, what, we don't want to just be there and be counted as, women and that, but let us try to go an extra mile to really support ourselves in order to succeed in life.
Is education key?
Yes, education is key, and I also talk about different forms of education. You have your formal education, we have non-formal education, we have informal education. So when I say education is key, I mean education in its broader sense, because there are people who will not have the opportunity to go through the formal education. And I don't want to be biased towards that. Of course, I'm more likely to be biased over that because that is the space that maybe the path that I've walked. I've studied until, the PhD level. But is that, the route that I will force anyone to take? No. But still education is key. People have to look at, their strength, what is important. Education will always be key, whether it's formal, whether it's informal, whether it's non-formal education, but it is key because that's when you learn to do certain things and you learn to, to make a living for yourself.
What words do you live by?
So the words that I live by, and these are the principles that are very important for me. Firstly, I always say one size doesn't fit all. In the kind of work that I do and the things that I studied and stuff, I do a lot of systems, thinking and systemic interventions and all that. One thing that I have learned is that one size never fits all. It doesn't matter where. Whether I'm at home, whether I'm at work, one size never fits all. People are different. There are different circumstances. There are different situations. So you need to understand that and find, leverage, points that helps you to address the system from the systemic, manner. So that is one thing that I've learned. The second thing that I always remind myself is that my world is not your world. My world is not other people's world. My experiences are not other people's experiences. Therefore, I try so hard not to use my point of view as the only reality. So my reality can never be, everybody's realities. So even how I talk to people, how I choose my words, it's influenced by that because I don't want a situation where I assume that my reality is the only reality. So these two things for me help me to want to understand people better and how I communicate with them. Let me give a practical example where if I feel hurt by you, I try to use words where I will say, you annoy me, but I feel annoyed. Those kind of things. And these are the things that I learn on daily basis in order for me to interact and understand people better. I have my realities, but other people have their own realities. And one cannot assume that my reality is the most important reality.
What do you know for sure?
What I know for sure is that I am me. That's what I know for sure. I know that I am me, and I know for sure that I am where I am today. Not because I'm intelligent. I am where I am today because there have been a lot of people along my path who actually carried me. Could be family, could be friends, it could be even people who just believe in me. When somebody say, I believe in you, you ask yourself, what is it that they believe in me? And you try to be the best, version of yourself so that you don't disappoint, those who believe in you. But I know for sure that I am who I am today. Even people who do not like me or the people who hurt me in the process, I learn a lot because then you rise up and you become, the better version of yourself. You become a better person, or you even become more resilient. So I know for sure that I am where I am today because, there are a lot of, people who build my character. But also I know that I am where I am today because my God loves me and that protection that I have on a daily basis.
I like that. What brings you joy?
What brings me joy is seeing other people happy, making other people happy. When I'm in my family, like with my siblings, when I see my siblings happy, it brings me enormous joy. When I see my children happy, when I see my extended family happy, it brings me a lot of joy. And I invest a lot in that. So it's not just, you want to see people happy and you don't do something to make them happy. So I invest a lot in actually reaching out to people. But I also do a lot of mentoring and coaching in my personal capacity, just to lend a helping hand. That for me is the most inspiring thing. And sometimes I wouldn't even know how I would live without helping others because it defines who I am. So that really brings me joy. So when I wake up in the morning, I'm like, thinking, whom am I going to help tomorrow? How am I going to help them? And that, gives me a lot of, satisfaction and a lot of, joy. So because I know that I am where I am today because someone opened the door for me. Someone believed in me. Someone helped. So I would like to do the same for others in the paying it forward kind of principle. So that for me, it's very, very satisfying.
You're a very feminine woman. With the people coming behind you, what are you parting words of wisdom to the girl child that wants to embrace the femininity, to her that is emotional and full of expression and still trying to make it in this man's world, still wanting to, cut through the clutter and the noise that is masculinity and trying to still hold on to your femininity? What would you say to her?
Yeah, I think for me, and I'll talk about, what works for me, because what works for me might not be what works for someone else. I think what works for me is that, first of all, I embrace who I am. I embrace things that I can't change. I can't change that I'm a woman. I'm a woman and I love it. But one thing that also brings with, the notion of being a woman, and I'm putting, inverted commas because we can, have a debate around that. I'm a very emotional person. I cry a lot. I cry when I'm happy. I cry when I'm sad. And especially when you're at workplace, people tend to mistake that as a sign of weakness. There were times where even if you don't feel like crying and the tears just, come out. But I've come to a space where I've embraced that as part of who I am. I even have a poem where I talk about the language of my emotions. And what I'm saying is that, I use my tears as the language of my emotions. It's the emotions when I express my happiness. They come when I express my sadness and whatever, but never and never mistake, my tears for the sign of weakness, because I'm not weak. So as I engage with young people or women, find your strength, know who you are. There are certain things that you can't change, but the very same thing that you can't change, how do you use it to your benefit? And yes, the world is brutal out there. Sometimes you struggle to enter into some spaces on the basis of you being a woman, or on the basis of you being an African, or on the basis of you being not economically, we always say, your pocket, how deep your pocket is, defines, also how successful you become and all that. So know yourself, know your weaknesses, know the things that you can change. What you can change, you navigate and work towards, that. So that is probably what I could actually encourage, people. And use your comparative advantage. There is no way that I want to be like a man. Do I want equal opportunities? Yes. But do I want to be like a man? No. I'm very clear about that. I don't want to be like a man, but I want equal opportunities like a man. And when we also do the gender thing, I ask myself, is there any biological reason why I cannot do a certain thing? If yes, then I don't want to change that. But if there is no any biological reason why I cannot do certain things, then that is where the point of discussion can actually come. So, but I don't want to be like a man, but I want equal opportunities like men. And if there is no biological reason why I can't do certain things, yes, I can do it.
The investments you've made are obviously very fascinating and impressive. Where do you believe you got that wisdom to do that from?
I would think, it's probably from my father. Like I said, I come from a very strong, knit family. My siblings are very strong, people. We have strong personalities. My father was a very strong person. My mother was a strong person. They were not business people or whatsoever, but in whatever they did, they had, that determination. So I think that determination, I got it, from my family as well. Because when you have challenges like this, one thing that I have learned is that sometimes you cannot control what happens around you, but how you deal with it depends on your internal drive. And we make choices. So I could say, if I get 500,000, I could choose to go and buy a brand new car. It's a choice. But if I will get, 500,000 as a lotto, instead of going and buy a brand new car, I'll go and buy a property. The difference there is that, I will be driving a small car, but I have a property that I hope, it will give me some return in the long run. You will be driving a nice car, which I also love to drive sometimes, but, our priorities will determine where we get. So yes, I will drive a nice car, but I'm going to drive a very nice car once I have managed to pay one property, settle the bond, then make sure that the rental that I get from that property will be the rental that will be paying for my nice car. When that will happen, I don't know. But yes, so unless I'm able to pay off, the bond of one property and let, that property pays for my brand new car, I will continue to drive my smaller nyana car. And these are the choices that we make in life. But this is what works for me.
Thank you, Hlamalani.
Thank you.
That is a truly inspirational story.
Yeah.
I wish you all the best of luck in life, and may all your dreams and hopes come true. Thank you for your time.
Welcome.